All right, good evening. At this time, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Pitt County Board of Commissioners meeting for January 10th, 2022. At this time, if we could go ahead and call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Yes. Chairman Fitzpatrick?
Here.
Vice Chairman Albright?
Here.
Commissioner Colson?
Oh, you got to unmute. Here.
Okay. Commissioner Floyd Huggins?
Here.
Commissioner Perkins Williams is going to be late. Commissioner Nunnally?
Here.
Commissioner McLaughlin?
Here.
Commissioner Ward?
The unmute. Here.
Okay. And I believe Commissioner White is going to be late as well. So everyone is present except Commissioner Perkins Williams and Commissioner White.
Okay. And I believe they both requested that we go ahead and get started, and they'll be joining us later. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, if we could go ahead and do the invocation and the pledge. Commissioner McLaughlin.
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, thank you for another day. Thank you for life, health, and strength. We pray now for Commissioner Jimmy Garris and the loss of his wife, Carolyn. We pray, Lord, that you give them strength and peace. We ask now, Lord, that you lead us and guide us as we go through the business of your people in Pitt County. We pray this in thy holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Commissioner Colson.
Everybody say the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for
which
which
it
it stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved,
So
Mr.
moved.
Chair.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second, Madam Clerk.
Chairman Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Albright?
Yes.
Commissioner Colson?
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins?
Yes.
Commissioner Nunnally?
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Manager, do we have any public addresses for the board this evening?
We have nobody who has signed up to speak.
We're off to a good start. Okay, let's move on to item number 6. Proclamation recognizing January 2022 as Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month.
Thank you. Pam Strickland, founder of, and is Pam with us? I know she was on as an attendee, and I would like her to be able to see us. There she is. Okay, terrific. Welcome, Pam, who is the founder of Eastern North Carolina Stop Human Trafficking Now. She has asked for the board's support to adopt a proclamation recognizing January 2022 as Human Trafficking Awareness Month and Prevention Month. She, along with several members of her coalition against human trafficking, would have been present to accept this proclamation in person, but we have pivoted to virtual. So I will show you the proclamation that we will mail to Ms. Strickland. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, let me read it.
Absolutely.
This is entitled Proclamation Recognizing Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month, January 2022. Whereas human trafficking involves the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, buying, or selling of human beings for their services of labor or commercial sex through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. And whereas human trafficking violates basic human rights and deprives victims of human dignity and freedom. And whereas human trafficking is a growing global and national problem, with North Carolina being consistently ranked among the top 10 states for prevalence in human trafficking. And whereas it is imperative that we educate our communities, our young people and families to take an active interest in learning how to recognize the risks and resist predators who use coercion and threats to manipulate children as young as 12 into labor or sex trafficking. And whereas in recognition of the need for that education, the North Carolina General Assembly enacted legislation mandating that sex trafficking prevention and awareness information be included in the sexual health education curriculum. And whereas the North Carolina General Assembly enacted legislation in 2019 mandating that sex trafficking training be provided to all public school personnel. And whereas the Pitt County Coalition Against Human Trafficking seeks to eradicate human trafficking by empowering organizations and individuals through collaboration, leadership, and training. And whereas the Pitt County Sheriff's Office, the Pitt County Department of Social Services, Pitt County Schools, and many other organizations are active members of the Pitt County Coalition Against Human Trafficking. And whereas Pitt County is committed to protecting people vulnerable to human trafficking and taking action to end human trafficking through prevention, prosecution, and partnerships, now therefore the Pitt County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim January 2022 as Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month in Pitt County and commend its observance to all citizens. Adopted this the 10th day of January 2022, signed by Michael Fitzpatrick, Chairman, and attested by Kimberly W. Hines, Clerk to the Board. And we present this virtually to Pam Strickland. If she wants to make a remark, she may, and then I will need a formal motion by the board adopting this.
Thank you so much. We are so grateful for the support of the commissioners and for our partners in the county to join us in the anti-human trafficking movement here in North Carolina. One thing that we want to ask for you to do is tomorrow is actually Wear Blue Day to recognize Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So if you are able to wear blue and take a picture of yourself and put it on social media with the hashtag Wear Blue Day, that would be awesome. I do want to mention that several of my colleagues from the Pitt County Coalition Against Human Trafficking are here, but I don't think that they're showing up. So I do want to recognize them. Pitt County DA Ferris Dixon is here with us. Karen Harrington, Juan Allen, Marie Welch, Maria Pinto, Melinda Sampson are those that I'm aware of that are here, and there may be others. So I want to thank them for their support. I wanted to let you know that the coalition was formed back in 2016 to create a group that would work together to prevent and to stop human trafficking and to address human trafficking here in Pitt County. And so we invite the commissioners and the county staff and anyone else who's listening who is interested to join the coalition. And I wanted to let you know that our next meeting is going to be on January 20th. Our speaker will be Liz Lyles, who is the founder of Daughters of Worth. She is a longtime member of the coalition, and because she works with at-risk girls here in our area, the organization has actually worked with several human trafficking survivors. And so she's going to share her experience with that at our coalition meeting on January 20th and talk about the ways that we as a community can prevent our children and other citizens from being vulnerable to human trafficking.
Thank you so much, Pam. We appreciate that tremendously.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I moved for the adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded, Madam Clerk.
Chairman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
All right, now if we could move on to the public hearings. Mr. Rhodes.
Happy New Year, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. To get the new year started off, we're going to have one of our first public hearings for our zoning ordinance amendments. I'll attempt to share my screen real quickly and we'll get started on that. Madam Manager, can you see my full screen?
I can, yes.
Thank
You may
you.
proceed.
Okay, first, just to give you a little preview as to what the zoning ordinance amendments are about tonight. These were directed by the board following some discussion with the large-scale data processing center that was proposed near Belvoir Elementary School. And so you may recall that we first adopted the amendments to enlist or improve our zoning ordinance to allow this particular use in certain zoning districts. And in turn, after our first plan came through for consideration, the board did direct staff to go forward with some changes after that particular plan was withdrawn. So what we've done, we've got several portions within the section that deals with large-scale data processing centers. And we've increased the minimum separation distance. We've addressed some of the noise concerns and more specifically cited those in the ordinance, and also clarify the definition for the this type of use. So first up, one of the major concerns was where these types of facilities could be allowed. What we heard from the board was that rural residential was not an appropriate area for these types of facilities to be considered or located. So as you can see on the chart on the screen, we have now removed as a special use permit this type of use under the rural residential zoning category. It still stands within the rural agricultural district and then some of those commercial and industrial districts. And likewise, within the development standards, we have removed RR, rural residential, from where it is allowed. And as we heard, there were a lot of concerns about the distance separation between these types of facilities and particular land uses, other land uses. So we have used some language that's actually in a couple of other ordinances that we administer. One in particular being the sexually oriented business ordinance, where we do have separations from certain uses like churches or schools or residences of a 1/4 mile. And that's what we've included here as well. The site plan that has to be submitted with this also should include some of this information, along with an acoustical engineer's study of the sound effects or noise effects that this type of land use would bring upon the local area. We also specifically cite that this particular facility would have to meet the requirements of our noise ordinance here in Pitt County, which is very stringent, one of the most stringent ones in the state. And as I mentioned, the definition itself has been updated to a certain extent, and we wanted to ensure that people understood that this is a broader definition, because these types of facilities can be other things besides cryptocurrency facilities. They might be doing modeling for weather or genome sequencing and those sorts of things. So all these types of facilities are what we would classify as a large-scale data processing center. This information has been shared with our planning board, and at their December meeting, the board unanimously recommended approval of this by the Board of Commissioners. So tonight we have two motions, one being the consistency statement and also recommending the approval of this language with an effective date of tomorrow. So with that, Mr. Chair, we're ready for the public hearing.
If you'll unmute.
My apologies. First meeting, in case you're bossing me around. Madam Manager, has anyone signed up?
We have no one signed up to speak.
Okay. At this time, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and entertain.
I moved for closing of the public hearing. Did you need that motion?
It has been closed. We're now entertaining a motion 1 and 2 or other discussion by the board if needed.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the proposed amendment to the Pitt County zoning ordinance consistent with the Pitt County Comprehensive Land Use Plan, and also approve the proposed amendments with an effective date of January the 11th, 2022.
It's been moved. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, I've got my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you, Tom.
I'm troubled with the loudness, the noise issue. To me, the wording is not specific enough, just to say that it's one of the most stringent within the state, and I don't disagree with that. I just see where exceptions to that could be problematic, and I'm not sure that that wording is going to be effective. Having said that, I'll vote for this, but I just hope that we remember what happened with Compute North and the outrage that happened up there. And there are potential things that might come to pass. And once we put an ordinance into place, it's my understanding we can't do anything about it. Now, is that correct or not?
I believe that is correct. And my understanding is this will make that more stringent. So I think hopefully that'll address some
It
of the.
doesn't make it stringent enough is my worry. Having said that, I just wanted to voice that opinion. Or
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I want to ask Madam Attorney, is there a stronger word or a stronger phrase or sentence?
I will answer as your manager, and Jordan Smith, Deputy County Attorney, is also available on our Zoom tonight. But I can take a stab at that one quickly. I don't believe, so the noise ordinance itself is not being changed, and it has much more detailed language about decibel levels depending upon the zone or district that you are in. So what this zoning amendment does is continues to require compliance with the noise ordinance in Pitt County. If you would like your noise ordinance to be stronger, then that can be certainly something we can look at as a separate ordinance amendment. But as it stands, your zoning amendment really talks about the location of a particular business. I will say in response that I do believe that the zoning amendments as proposed strike a delicate balance between being friendly to business, but imposing sufficient restrictions and limitations to be sure that the right business is in the right place and harmonious with the surrounding community.
Mr. Chair, if I could chime in as well.
Yes, sir.
To Commissioner Floyd Huggins' question, I agree with everything that Madam Manager had said. I'd also say that this text amendment requires a prospective acoustical report by an engineer that will give us some level of decibel level of how loud the facility will be. And it will have to meet the requirements of the noise ordinance. And to Commissioner Colson's question about whether or not, if you make these changes, are your hands tied going forward? No, this board can always amend the zoning ordinance. Now, if there's been a application submitted under these set of facts, then the applicant may get to choose under which set of regs they will be governed by. But the zoning ordinance can always be amended by this body.
Mr. Chair, since I raised the issue, that's my problem, because when I read this, would this still not have allowed the crypto mining as far as loudness noise, would it still not have allowed that up north of 264? I think it would.
Well, no, well, from a locational standpoint, Commissioner Colson, that area is in the RR district.
Understood,
So,
but I'm saying from the noise, James.
from the noise, not necessarily. You may recall that we had some pretty detailed acoustical studies done where some mitigation requirements were going to be put in place to keep the noise levels down. We never went far enough with that plan to actually go into the details of whether it would meet the noise ordinance or not. So I would have to say it's undetermined whether it would have met the requirements.
Well, shouldn't we be very careful about what we approve now? I just don't want to see us ending up with egg on our face a second time.
Well, I would say, Commissioner Colson, with our noise ordinance, again, I'm not aware of another one that's as stringent as ours is, unless you want to change that. I think the other criteria, the other development standards are on point. If it is strictly an issue with the noise ordinance, we may need to look at that a bit further.
Okay, well, like I said, I'll vote for this, but I'm just a little skittish.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
with that said, why don't we look at the noise ordinance? Give a look at that before we finalize this.
I think that's.
And then maybe we, as Tom said, we won't end up with egg on our face.
Are there any specific proposals of what direction this board is asking planning or someone to come back and look at? I think this is already amending that, so it's going to be a little more specific and stringent than what it previously was. And it's my understanding, James, correct me if I'm wrong, that this was unanimously approved by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I would really recommend tonight that we move forward with these amendments because these are making it more stringent in a number of ways just by the acoustical study and some other separation requirements. I think this is a first step, Commissioner Colson, in getting where you want to be, but the noise ordinance discussion, I think, should follow these amendments, in my opinion.
I agree.
Okay.
So could I ask about the second clause in that number 11? It seems to me that we have a clause there that is similar to that harmonious clause that we used prior, and that's if there were a period after county noise ordinance, it would be different. It says, and shall not disrupt the activities of the adjacent land uses, which I like because of its vague nature. That it seems like if we had a lot of people come before us and tell us how this proposal was going to disrupt the activities of the adjacent people on the adjacent land. I like that part of it, and I also really like the buffer. I think it's planning has done a really good job of moving this forward. I certainly don't want to discount what Commissioner Colson is saying, but I wish that maybe Jordan could address what I'm reading. Maybe I'm reading too much into the last clause in number 11. Does that not give us a fairly large way to address this? And I guess here I'm also trying to get at the particular noise angle that concerned a lot of people was not that the facility exceeded the noise level, but that it had a solid hum that was lower than that exceeding. I think possibly that if there's a way that that could be addressed, and Mr. Colson had spoken about that, I think, when we were talking about this before, and it's a circumstance where it may be legal according to the decibel level, but would be horrible if it were going on 24/7, at a lower level and it were close enough. But again, this distance separation seems real nice to me. Let me get back to my original question, Jordan, if you could comment on that, and shall not disrupt the activities of the adjacent land uses.
Commissioner Albright, yeah, that certainly seems to give you a pretty broad authority. And if there's a special use permit application and somebody brings evidence to you that this disturbs it, that would appear to give you a basis to deny.
Okay, thank you. I like this a lot, and I appreciate planning's efforts on it, and how quickly they've addressed this also.
Great.
Lee,
Mr. Chair,
yes, sir.
I concur. I think that as Commissioner Albright pointed out, this leaves a lot of credence to what we were confronted with. I think Mr. Colson is aware of the crypto mining experience. And so this speaks loudly to the Pitt County noise ordinance as I can read this. And I think that we will be in safekeeping and moving forward with this.
Okay. I think everybody who has their hands up has already had a chance to speak. Is there any other comments?
I think
Yes.
there's a hand up, yes, by Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Manager. I'm sorry, I left my phone on. I looked at this policy very close, and I'm gonna cut my phone out. I forgot to cut my phone off. But I looked at this policy item by item, and I was concerned. I asked my questions earlier about the distance, but number 11, when it said the activities of the adjacent land uses, that dispel my concern, because if someone complaining about noise at early morning of the hour, and that's enough, and I love people cry out about it, then once it's there though, what can be done? And Mr. Rose told me earlier today that, noise blockers. What was that, Mr. Rose?
Well, there are a number of ways to mitigate the noise, and there were actually some different ways of canceling out the noise that had been proposed in the acoustical study that from that first land use that we were contending with. So there are different ways, whether it be barriers, whether it be silencers, those are all part of that study that will now require.
Well, I appreciate that, but I certainly would like to see us look into that noise ordinance. And once a company establishes in an area and there's noise, it's hard to say pick up and move, even though something like that has happened in other states. I think we need to look at the noise ordinance as well. But since we have increased the distance from schools and churches, and we need to look at also the wind blow, because noise does not stay in one area, it moves with the wind. So I'm going to support this, but I sense the deputy attorney is saying that we can amend our ordinance whenever we like. We need to know where a business is going to establish to meet this. And we need to know how, distances and what's involved in it. Do you understand what I'm saying? See, we don't know where a business may establish that will cause probable noise. Is that right? Nobody can answer that?
That's right, Mary. That's exactly right. You don't know. And that's why this process is business specific and requires the application for a special use permit for all of those factors to be considered individually.
Okay, thank you. I can support that.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to remind the board of one other thing. Remember the fellow that lives on Allen Road that came before us a number of times? And he's complaining about how the noise coming from activity in landfill area and how it's driving him crazy. I mean, just bear in mind that the noise ordinance by itself does not address all issues.
Okay, well, I think that's certainly something we can take up at a later time. Madam Clerk, do we have a first and motion and a second?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We'll go ahead and call the question.
Yes, Chairman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We can now address the franchise amendment number 4 to the C&D landfill. Mr. Demmer.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Back in 2000, Pitt County Board of Commissioners approved a franchise agreement for C&D landfill to construct and operate a construction and demolition debris landfill, which is located off 264 near Pactolus. Since then, the franchise has been renewed a number of times to increase their service area. We increased their tonnage that they could take, their daily tonnage, and also we have increased the additional years for the franchise. Usually in the past, the franchise was approved for a 5-year term. The site, the construction and demolition site is permitted by the state of North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, and we continue to contract with the landfill to take our C&D waste. Currently, the landfill has less than a couple of years or a year left on their existing cell and has asked to amend the franchise to do an expansion, which includes phase 3, and that is shown in the map that I did provide. No other changes are requested at this time for the franchise agreement. We do have to put a notice in the paper 30 days prior to this hearing, which has been done. The property also has been posted to allow anybody the opportunity to speak, and would answer any questions. And right now I'd like to see if we could open up the public hearing. There will be if it is approved tonight, we will come back in the next meeting for an additional approval. It has to be approved at 2 consecutive meetings.
Okay, and I believe that's under, I don't mean to take county manager's job here, but it looks like if approved, it will come back on that second reading for February 7th. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
At this time, if we could go ahead and open the public hearing.
And we have no one signed up to speak.
At this time, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Moving on.
Okay.
Moving in.
Do we have, I guess we don't need to, do we need a motion in a second?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
And you do need a second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. Madam Clerk?
Chairman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
There is discussion. There is discussion here. I had my hand up and looked like I see somebody else's hand up. I want to raise a question.
Okay, I thought your hand was still up from the last one.
No, I put it down and put it back up, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner
since
Perkins?
This is impact holders, and since we can come back another meeting, if we do not vote on it tonight, that gives us a little more time to look at it with more scrutiny, or what?
I think it still has to go through 2 steps. First one, and then it comes back again February 7th. So tonight is not the end all be all, is my understanding.
Okay.
That is correct.
And so if we don't hold, if we vote for it tonight, will it come back, when it comes back up, it can come back in another year? We don't have to extend it to them beyond these 2 years. I understand they have 2 years on the current.
they have between 1 and 2 years left of life at the current cell that they're in. And what they're asking for is just to move into another cell on their property.
Is there a reason why they're going to move it in at this time rather than wait until a year out?
No, ma'am, they have to go through the permitting process, and this is part of the permitting process.
This is the first step.
This is the first step. It will take them approximately a year to go through the permitting process with the state of North Carolina. So that's why.
So we're just starting it now.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner
Thank
Colton, do you have a comment also? Is your
No,
Okay.
sorry.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, Commissioner Perkins Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner White.
I think you missed me. But yes.
I just started back where I left off. I've got you down. Commissioner
Okay.
White?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. If we could now move on to item number 8, the Employee Service Awards. Madam Manager and Ms. Hardy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Manager. Employees with 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25 and 30 years of service with Pitt County are recognized by the Board of Commissioners each quarter. Employees who reach these 5-year milestones during a quarter are honored at regularly scheduled commissioners meetings following that quarter. Due to COVID-19, employees from this quarter will receive their certificates and service awards from their department head. Although Ms. Hardy and I did this morning present those 20-year service awards for individuals who received a watch. With that, I'd like to, Mr. Chairman, if you'll allow, I'll read out the names.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. The January 10th, 2022 Service Awards Program, those recognized with 5 years of service are Jeffrey Lindell Chavis, Detention; Lee Cox Cutler, Public Health; Brandon Tyler D'Autrece, Detention; Melissa Ryan Dolbury, Tax Administration; Camelia Nichelle Ewing, Public Health; Christina M. Forge, Public Health; Virginia B. Garris, Social Services; Marcela Alejandra Guzman Silva, Tax Administration; Rashad Devon Hudson, Detention; Austin Reed Kinsey, Sheriff's Office; Natasha Nicole Melvin, Social Services; Abby Dalton Patrick, Social Services; Shavonda Perkins Ormond, Social Services; Stephen V. Roman, Public Health; and Selma Ann Staten, Social Services. Those are your 5-year awards. For 10 years, we recognize Belinda Harris Bella, Social Services; Mindy Tripp Fidash, Sheriff's Office; and Thomas James Fidash, Sheriff's Office. For 15 years, we recognize Scott W. Feller at Solid Waste and Recycling; Deborah Contina Green, Social Services; Veronica L. Goddard, Public Health; Bongerald Jacobs, Social Services; Keisha Jones, Social Services; Kimberly Patrick, Social Services; Latoya Peel at Elections; January J. Simpson, Detention; and Heather E. Spencer in Human Resources. For 20 years, we recognize Todd Osborne, Emergency Management; Victor Banfield, Social Services; Sharon Jones, Social Services; Sharon Ann Langley at the Sheriff's Office; Kendra Norval, Social Services; and Robert O. Webb at the Detention Center. We have 3 25-year awards for Donna L. Davis in Management Information Systems, Denise M. Moore Jones in Social Services, and Diana L. Weaver in Social Services. And then we conclude our awards recognitions this year with 1 30-year award for Terry L. Mills in Management Information Systems. Mr. Chairman, that completes your service awards for this quarter.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank everyone for their hard work. We can now move on to the items for reports. Dr. Silvernail.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. Good evening, Madam Manager. Want to share my screen with you all. And let's see if we can make that full size. All right, should be looking at the cover shot for my presentation at this point. I'm going to jump right in and review the data with you. I want to point out something to you all that I've kind of alluded to in the past, but I don't know that I've ever spelled this out as clearly as I'd like to tonight, that when we think about the burden of disease or actual infections in our community, the cases that we count represent a subset or a portion of the actual number of infections out there, the burden of disease out there. And when it comes to COVID is no exception to that. With the original strain, we had serosurveillance data that showed that for every case we counted, there were 2.5 actual infections out there. With Delta, that number's probably something like 1 to 4 or 5. Some people think it may be as high as 1 to 6 or 7 infections. And with Omicron, it's not known yet, but it's thought to be even greater than Delta. And I think the case data bears that out when you get to see that here. Cases in Pitt County have grown at a tremendous rate. The height of the individual days has already surpassed peak activity in other COVID waves. We're roughly twice the height of the wave last January, and then the Delta wave this spring and summer. And this has, of course, been fueled by the rapid spread of the Omicron variant in Pitt County. We had the dubious honor of having the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th cases of Omicron identified in Pitt County in the state back last month. This is the last genomic sequencing report I have out of the Brody Biden Health Laboratories. And you can see in the last 3 weeks of December, we had a very narrow slice of Omicron, a bigger slice, and then an even bigger slice. If we look at that in numbers, the first week that Omicron was detected, that sample came from December 11th. And represented about 0.7% of the sample sequenced in the Brody program. The second week, Omicron represented 3.9%, 5 times, a little over 5 times what it was the week before in the sequencing. And then the following week, we had gone to 23.6%. The last specimen sequences were collected on December 20th. Brody and the laboratories were shut down through the holidays. So I should get a sequencing report this week. As of this past Saturday, January 8th, we were 4 weeks into the Omicron wave. And when the report comes out this week, I expect that Omicron will dominate. I'd be surprised if it's not something on the order of 75% or more of sequence samples coming forward. And there may be a little bit of a lag there, but I would expect it somewhere in that range. Here's where we were. This is the little data scorecard that I run every day, basically Monday through Friday. The first couple of days after the holidays, we were still relatively low number of cases. The 14-day rolling number was at 692. That was about 50 cases per day, 3.7 cases per 1,000, and our percent positivity was up, but only at 9.6. I'm going to kind of let you see the next couple of slides, and then we'll talk about the last one mostly. So if we roll 12/30, we had about doubled our cases from the day before. Our percent positivity had doubled, or almost not quite doubled, but was about 1.5 times where it was. Our cases per 1,000 were up to 7.2. Go to the first Monday of the month last week. Our cases over 14 days were up to in excess of 2,000. That's 155 cases plus per day. 11.8 cases per 1,000, and our percent positivity was at really a historic 20% across all providers here in the county. By the end of last week, we continued to see similar growth. Our percent positivity is up to 23.4%. We're at 14.9 cases per 1,000. As of today, the last 14 days, we have seen 4,959 cases in the county. That's 354 cases per day. That's 26.8 cases per 1,000 in the county. Our known cases now total almost 37,000 in the county. That represents about 20% of Pitt County residents. Our recovered number as a percentage has fallen, but our recovered number continues to grow. And with the influx of new cases, the percentages dropped to 86.2%. At times, that number's as high as 98+%. Our fatalities have remained stable at 146%. And with the influx in new cases and no additional fatalities to report at this time, our case fatality rate has fallen to 0.39 unrounded, or 0.4, which is tied for the all-time low in the history of the pandemic. And 32% positivity rate today is the highest that we have seen even early in the pandemic when our numbers were smaller. I only had a percentage in maybe the mid-20s in the mid-April-ish time frame of 2020. If we use that original 2.5 times correction, which is a conservative correction of the data, we would say that in excess of 92,000 folks in Pitt County have had it. That's basically right on the 50% mark of Pitt County residents, and that would drop our case fatality rate to 0.2. The numbers actually, because the numbers have grown so fast, it's actually dropped our case fatality rate just because of the increase in the denominator. I want to show you this graphically. Again, looking at this, you've seen this chart before. This was the Delta wave, and we had come down. This was our post-holidays. You can see we were fairly flat the first couple of weeks, and then we started to take off with Omicron. Omicron, the top of that wave now would be well above the top of that graph for a week-to-week curve. This one is by race and ethnicity. African-American cases have grown, but still remain a smaller number than whites. Interestingly, this bar, if you look at the bar marked other, that matches pretty well with about the size of the bar of the 25 to 49-year-old age group, which is always age-wise the highest number of cases. Next graph shows this by age, and here's that 29 to 49-year-old age group, very large group in this, but we've also seen significant growth in our 17-year-old age group in the past weeks here of the pandemic. I'm going to give you a disclaimer. I am not a disparities epidemiologist. The epidemiology that I've done has been in communicable disease and occupational health, but I wanted to take a stratified look at mortality in Pitt County and present that all to you tonight so that you can see where we stand from that perspective. If we stratify our case fatality by age, which are deaths over cases, in the 0 to 17-year-old age group, we've had no deaths among almost 6,000 cases, so that's a 0% case fatality rate. In the 18 to 24-year-old age group, we've had 0 deaths in a little over 7,000 cases, and that's also a 0% case fatality rate. When we get into the 25 to 49-year-old group, most of these deaths are on the higher end of that range, but there are some down in the 20s. We've had 7 deaths in that group amongst almost 13,000 cases, and that gives us a case fatality rate of 0.053. In our 50 to 64-year-old age group, we've had 29 deaths in a little over 5,000 cases, and that gives us a case fatality rate of 0.56. In the 65 to 74-year-old age group, 42 deaths among 2,000 plus cases, and that gets us to 2% case fatality rate. And in our 75-year-olds, we've had 75 plus and older, we've had 68 deaths among about 1,300 cases, 1,348 cases, and that's a case fatality rate of 5%, just a hair over 5%. So clearly, age with increasing age, increasing risk of mortality occurs with COVID, and this is across all variants, not variant specific, by the way, and based on the January 4th data set that I received from the NC COVID system. If we stratify this by gender, we've had 71 deaths among women in 19,000 cases and change. That's a case fatality rate of 0.37%. In males, 75 deaths among about 15,000 cases, a little over 15,000 cases, case fatality rate of 0.49%. When we stratify this by race, things get interesting. In African Americans, we've had 49 deaths among 5,497 cases. That's a case fatality rate of 0.89%. So still less than 1%. But about 8 times that of flu is generally reported at 0.1%. So about 8 or 9 times that of influenza in African Americans. In whites, we've had 86 deaths among 19,212 cases. That's a case fatality rate of 0.44. So we've had about 3.5 times as many cases in whites, but the case fatality rate amongst whites is about half of that of African Americans, in spite of 3 times as many cases. So maybe some of that is the denominator size, but certainly it would appear that African Americans die at about twice the rate of whites do from COVID here in Pitt County. Amongst those that classify themselves as other, we've had 8 deaths in 6,874 cases, and that's a case fatality rate of 0.11%. The last way that we looked at this, or that I looked at this, was by ethnicity, and these are stratified as declaring themselves Hispanic or non-Hispanic. Amongst individuals who identify as Hispanics, we've had 4 deaths in a little over 2,000 cases. That's case fatality rate of 0.18%. In non-Hispanics, we've had 135 deaths in cases that are about 26,000, a little over 26,000 cases. And that's a case fatality rate of 0.5%, which is about where we've been through most of the pandemic across all folks without stratifying. But move on, briefly touch on vaccinations. Vaccinations in Pitt County. As of today, we've had 99,371 individuals receive at least 1 dose. That's 55% of Pitt County residents. And our fully vaccinated individuals, not including 3rd or booster doses, are now 4th doses for some individuals, potentially 92,775 individuals, representing about 51% of the county per the state system. And that concludes my remarks for this evening. I'm going to stop my share.
Commissioner Colton.
Dr. Silvernail, I don't want to dismiss COVID. I know it's a real disease. I know it's a problem. I believe many of the people there, the older ages, they died with COVID, not because of it. I know that you try to keep things pretty clean and everything, but the one thing that I think a lot of people are confused with, and I think your statistics here show it. We're still at 146 deaths. It's staying stable for several weeks. It's an indication, and across the country and across the world, and where it originated in South Africa, it all appears that the Omicron is not nearly as severe. It doesn't enter into the lower lungs. It affects the upper lungs and the nasal passage more so than anything. And the majority of people that get it are going to have very mild symptoms. I think when we hit the public with a lot of statistics, many of them that don't understand statistics get confused and they stay worried. And I believe the message from government has been fear and panic over COVID. It's not going to go away. We're going to have to live with it for the rest of our lives to some degree or other. Yes, we can live smart, but I would like to hear from you. Do you personally believe that the Omicron is less serious than the other variants?
Yes, Commissioner. I think in most individuals, Omicron so far appears to be a milder version of COVID. I think it's clearly more infectious, more transmissible than Delta or the other variants. Those that I know who have had Omicron so far have all had mild disease. Now, whether that's because of prior exposure, vaccination, or both, it's hard to say. But it does appear to at least be having a mild impact. I know hospitalizations in the Biden system are up some, but relative to the number of cases, not up as much as if this were a Delta wave per se. So I would agree with that.
Should that not be the message then that we really concentrate on?
Well, Commissioner, I've tried to be a voice of reason through this, and
yes, you have. Yes, you have. I agree.
I report the case numbers as they come. Case fatalities, deaths. There's always misclassification in epidemiology and the classification of deaths, and we can argue about that. We've tried to apply the definition as given to us. I will tell you, there's a case definition coming from Council of State and Territorial Epidemiologists that's probably going to increase our COVID deaths by about 20%, because instead of there being a 2-week period of recovery, it's now got to be 30 days recovered before death in order to not be a COVID death under that new definition. So that'll probably increase our COVID fatalities by about 20%, is what the state has suggested. But those are decisions that are made above my level. And as the local health director, I have to use the definitions that are given to me by these national organizations.
Yeah, and I understand. And I'm not trying to be critical of you personally or the health department in any way, shape, or form. I'm just concerned that a lot of people ask me, because I'm an elected official, they ask me, well, don't you know more about it than we do? And I mean, I have my opinions, but when I listen to what's happening across the world and across the country, I think we need to be less scared of this variant that's out there, this Omicron. Yeah, be careful, but don't go into panic. I mean, okay, you've answered my question. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Commissioner Nunley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Silvernail, for your continued work in this area. My question has to do with varied CDC guidance on exposures and how long people that are exposed or potentially vaccinated and exposed, how long they're being asked to quarantine or isolate. There's just been so much of that over the last couple of weeks, and I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you to answer that now, but I wonder if your department could, front and center, make something that's digestible to the general public about what they should do if they are infected pursuant to the current CDC guidance, and what happens. And there's so many variables. If you've been vaccinated, if you've not been vaccinated, if it's masked, if it's not masked, it's confusing, right? And to Commissioner Coulson's point, we want to be the best we can at living through COVID and not afraid of it. And I just wondered if maybe we could get something out there that's readily accessible. Say, hey, this is where we are right now. This is the CDC guidance. If you get exposed, this is what the recommendation is. Is that something that you think might be able to be done?
Yes, Commissioner. We actually do have a flow chart that's reasonably understandable that we've shared with county department heads and across the county. It was developed by my colleague Jim Madsen over in Beaufort County, and then shared through the state. We haven't necessarily made that public, but that's a good idea, and we certainly make that public, Commissioner. I share your frustration. Being at the bottom of the information chain from the CDC has made my life very difficult the past 2 years, and I just wish sometimes that they would talk to the folks who have to operationalize this guidance before they just put it out to the media. Part of that is the onerous federal clearance process. If you've ever dealt with the federal government, they have a tremendous clearance process to get formal documents out, formal guidance out. So when this came out on Monday, the 27th, excuse me, it was actually a press release and not formal guidance that kind of took most of us by surprise. I think some of it is based, in fact, because of how much the Omicron timeline is shortened in terms of incubation and recovery. So I think it's reasonable. I think it will work. We have certainly the last 2 weeks here been answering many questions for whether they're schools, groups, employers about the guidance, and trying to clarify that for folks, and again use these folks as force multipliers. But we'll get that flow sheet posted for the public as well.
Thanks, sir.
You're welcome.
Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
If I could ask Dr. Silvernail a question, please.
Sure.
Dr. Silvernail, first of all, I want to thank you for your comprehensive view and discussion on this matter. I'm very concerned about this a new virus that's out. As I was reading and listening to some of the state and national news report, I think you reported that today is a 32% positivity rate, and that rate, if I'm not mistaken, you can help me with this, is one of the highest in the state of North Carolina, here in Pitt County, if not the second highest. And when you talk about that, and you look in terms of the children that it's affecting, it's very concerning. And I want you, based upon your knowledge of that, if you could talk a little bit about how concerned this should be when you talk about a 32% positivity rate, the highest in Pitt County was today, I think you mentioned. And
yes, sir.
Could you speak to that, please?
Yeah, Commissioner, right now, if you have cold symptoms and you live in Pitt County, you probably have Omicron. Whether you've been tested or not, I would manage myself as if I had Omicron, if I had cold symptoms. Most commonly, headache, sneezing, sore throat, runny nose, very typical cold symptoms, plus or minus a mild cough, and plus or minus fever really seem to be the syndrome for this. Commissioner Colson is right when he says that this seems to affect the upper airways more than the lower airways. One of the reasons that I decided to do that stratified analysis was the concern and some statements that have made by national figures regarding rates in children and danger to children. I wanted people to understand that in Pitt County, we have not lost a child to COVID, thank God. And even under the age of 25, we haven't lost anyone to COVID. What I have said to folks, and I do mean this, because even if you look at someone who you would predict would have high risk for severe COVID, they may have a very mild course and vice versa. The behavior of this infection is unpredictable in the individual. And so we should all do our best to not get infected. That means washing our hands, socially distancing, wearing a mask when you can't be socially distanced. Then there's some argument about masks again. And again, that drives me crazy. And that's becoming an ever shorter trip every day. And getting vaccinated. And while, yes, you can still get the infection if you're vaccinated, the risks to you in terms of getting hospitalized, having a severe infection with COVID, or dying of COVID is far less if you've been hospitalized. And that's been borne out by some internal data that I've seen from the Vidant system. Again, I don't speak for Vidant, and I don't generally present their data without their specific consent. But I've seen internal data that supports that in the Vidant system here in our own backyard. So I think it's important that we all do our best to take care of ourselves. First of all, a healthier host survives any infection better, and do your best to avoid contracting this infection. For most of us, Omicron is likely to be a mild infection, but there's no guarantee on that.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
I have another question. My concern, Dr. Silvernail, is that you have a lot of people out here who do not want to be vaccinated. And then they stand in on their amendment right that they don't have to. Now, that's concerning to me because, I and my family, have a right. And that right is not, we want to live and not to die. And when you talk about, I'm not going to be vaccinated because this is my right, but yet you're infringing, I think, upon the rights of those that's vaccinated and trying to live a productive life. How will you speak to that kind of individual thinking, and what would you say in reference to that?
Well, again, Commissioner, I think the vaccines are safe. They are effective at preventing severe disease and death, and I would encourage everybody to consider getting vaccinated. I'm not a big fan of mandating vaccines for adults. I think adults should have the freedom of choice in that, but I certainly do encourage that. I've stated we've given, I think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 or 15,000 doses of Moderna through the health department with no serious side effects. And I've, stated that to the community at every opportunity that I've had the chance to do so. And we've done a lot less Pfizer, but we've certainly done the Pfizer for children and seen no severe reactions with the Pfizer in children. So I think I've again tried to talk with a calm demeanor and put that out to folks and try to give people a carrot rather than a stick.
Okay. My final question is that would you explain to the public what is the definition of positivity rate and when we have a 32% today?
So the positivity rate is calculated by the number of samples that are positive over the total number of samples. So a 32% rate means that 32 tests out of every 100 are positive.
Okay. How concerning is that to you?
That's very concerning when you consider that, for most of the pandemic, we've been in the single digits to low, teens. And as I said, our case numbers are just at this point the highest that we've ever seen. The height of the waves right now are dwarfing both the original wave of 2020 and early 2021 and the Delta wave of last spring and summer.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Dr. Silvernail, as we really do thank you for bringing information to us and trying to get information out to the public so they can understand it, whatever. But two things I want to ask. We talk about the percentage of people who are hospitalized and less, but yet the hospitalization is higher for the Delta.
Hospitalizations were higher for Delta, ma'am. If we look at as a percentage of cases that are in the hospital, at least early on, it appears that less Omicron cases are hospitalized than Delta cases were.
Okay. My other question is, do you have any numbers or information on testing, how that's going?
I did not put a testing slide in there, but we are back up probably at around 6,000 or 8,000, between 6,000 and 8,000 tests per week in the county right now.
Okay. I noticed the lines at the testing site on Stantonburg and the one behind the mall. They're long lines. So have you thought about maybe going out into the neighborhood and doing some testing, having some smaller sites to kind of take some of the those long lines, relieve those long lines at those two big sites?
We have not set up anything to go out and do testing in the community from the health department perspective. We have worked with Optum. They are going to add a second line at the mall site and work to double the capacity there. I've also been working with Mayor Connolly to establish another privately run vendor site at the former Sears store on the south end of town in that shopping dining complex area that would be available for testing. So we've been working to get that set up. The town of Aden reached out to me this morning about setting something up. I talked with my state folks, and I'm working to try to get something set up down there as well. So we are, in terms of the health department right now, 40% of my nursing positions are vacant, and several of our contract staff have left. We are strapped for staffing and would be hard pressed to go out and do a door-to-door community testing campaign at this time.
Okay. Well, I don't know that I was talking about door-to-door, but some smaller sites, you know, and looking at the Sears and some of the other ones would help take some of that pressure off of those other two sites.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I believe that's all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Sivanel, are there any self-tests or any of those tests that we used to have? That's all I wanted to know. And because you have answered my other question, so are there any self-tests? Because I'm still getting those questions.
Oh, I know, Commissioner. I've had several of you as commissioners reach out to me. I've had department heads reach out to me. I wish we could. We have been trying to obtain a supply of those test kits. They are in scarce supply. We did, in working with our partners at Duke, receive some Illum tests, a relatively small number, about 5,000 tests, but unfortunately the bulk of those were recalled before we were able to distribute them. And so no, we do not have at-home test kits to give out. I wish we did.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have another question since Mary raised that one. According to the news, the president is going to be getting out some of those home tests. Do you know how the distribution is going to work?
I do not for sure, ma'am. I believe in the press release that came from the White House that they were going to send some of these directly to individuals across the country, but the federal plan on that is a bit cloudy at this time.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Sivanel. Mr. Barnett.
Thank you, folks.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Board of Commissioners. I have some good news.
Something wrong with your sound here.
Is it coming in too high?
Loud.
Feedback is bad.
Give me 1 second.
Thank you.
Too low.
What about now?
Sound better.
Better.
Good, because I have good news. So I want you to make sure you can hear it. At our last meeting in December, I mentioned that the finance department in Pitt County is what the Government Finance Office Association refers to as a Triple Crown winner. And I had presented to you that we had received an award for our audit and our PAFR document. And 2 days later, we received the award for our budget. So tonight I present to you the 25th consecutive Distinguished Budget Award for our 2021-2022 budget. To receive the budget award, the county has to satisfy nationally recognized guidelines for effective budget presentation that assesses how well the budget serves as a policy document, a finance plan, an operational guide, and a communication device. We have to score proficient in all four categories, and we have. So I'm glad to give you some good news tonight. Once again, our budget is considered one of the best in the country as a document.
Thanks, Brian. I know we're getting used to you coming in here and having all these awards, but it certainly doesn't go unnoticed. So we certainly appreciate all the hard work of you and your staff and everybody in the county. So thank you very much. And it looks like you were up again for the ARP funding.
Right, I'm going to try to share my screen. So can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So back in October, you all had asked us to go out to the community. And so tonight we are going to give you a snapshot of what we received. Most of this presentation will be from a generalized standpoint because the detail, if we got into it, we'd be here all night. And I hope to have some further conversations about that detail. So I just wanted to point that out. I always like to start off, many of you have seen this before, but these are the areas where we're eligible, where we have eligibility for our ARP spending. We've broken it out into 5 categories. You may see it as 4 in other places, but we can address public health. We can address the negative economic impact. We can replace lost revenue, premium pay, and then for infrastructure, we can do water, sewer, and broadband investments.
One thing I really want to stress and point out as we move forward with our ARP funding, one big component is compliance. You all know, having dealt with other federal requirements when it comes to funding, that there's always a piece on the back end about what you have to do, what rules you have to follow, reporting you have to do. So this is one important piece considering the amount of money that we have received. The first thing that I do want to point out, that we can only spend our ARP funds on projects where the state has given us explicit authority as a county to spend money. So you may hear of really great ideas from the community or from other locations, but if it's not within the state of North Carolina under what counties can spend funds on, we cannot do it, even if it is ARP eligible. This spring, we will be bringing back some policies that we'll probably need to approve to make sure that we are in compliance. On the third point, that's also very important to stress. Anywhere that we spend money, we have to document the need for the spending. So just because it's a great idea of something we can do, we still need to show in some form or fashion a documented need for that spending. And then finally, anyone that we give money to as a subrecipient or beneficiary has to meet the same compliance requirements that the county has to meet. So again, they may have the best intentions, the best plan, but if we feel as if they can't meet that reporting guidelines that have been set forth by the Treasury Department, we should probably think really hard before giving out money. So here's a breakdown of what input we went out and did in the community in the months of November and December. We had 5 virtual Zoom sessions, 5 in-person sessions, and we decided that for a county of our size, it was important to get out into the community. So we held 1 session here at the county building, 1 at the Ag Center, 1 at the community schools and recreation facilities at Alice King Park. We hosted a session at the Grimesland Town Hall, and our final session was at the Farmville Public Library. We also ran for a month and a half an online survey, and then we also welcomed direct responses from the community. So I had several people send me stuff directly. We also had 1 or 2 people come and address you during your public comment period. And then also I was invited to come speak at the Northern Pitt Community Association meeting at the end of November. So initial feedback, the community was very appreciative of the fact that we went out and got their opinion before we put out a list of projects on our own. We heard that in a lot of places. It was actually quite nice to have a room full of people about a county issue, and they weren't mad at us. So it was really comforting to get that. What we also liked was the fact that we went out to them. The biggest thing that I noticed is that we still, and I guess it's good when you have 3 years to allocate the funds, we still have a little bit of homework to do to make sure people fully understand what we can and cannot do. I think eventually we do have to get to the point where we do have some sample projects out there just to give people a sense. There was another shock. No one was at a huge rush. I think they fully understood that, with the pandemic being an ongoing event, that we should take our time to make sure we are allocating the money out. And surprisingly, there was no one big issue. There are several issues that you're going to see as examples, but there was not one driving issue that I saw out from the community input. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just go into the in-person and Zoom. Just to give you a sense of what the community, their feedback. Our first Zoom session was actually here in the county building, and we didn't actually have anyone come, so I just jumped right to our second one that we held at the Mark W. Owens Auditorium at the Ag Center on November the 17th. Primarily, if you would think about, that was primarily covering the northern part of the county, so broadband, north of the river, concerns about food insecurities. There was also assistance in just helping people to use the ARP funding to make sure they understood it. And then one thing that you'll see several times come up was taking our health services out into our rural areas. So in this case, in the Pactolus and Clark's Neck area. Our third session was at the Community Schools and Recreation facility at Alice King Park on November 29th. Just wanted to give you a snapshot of, this was our best turnout. I'd imagine nearly every person there at some form or fashion talked about some type of gym facility. They wanted to see more recreational opportunities, especially involving pickleball. They wanted to see improvements for the walking trails there at Alice King Park. They wanted to see the trails widen. They wanted to see lights. They wanted to address just overall safety to get people out walking. They wanted to see more classes. They felt like that facility was a good place for people to come out and they could socially distance appropriately, so they wanted to see more activities. And then we even had some people north of the river come down and just echo the fact that we don't have much in the way of recreational activities in that part of the county, so they also wanted to look at recreation north of the river. In Grimson on December 1st at their town hall, the big part of their feedback was on the public safety side, so they wanted to make sure that we had the proper equipment for the volunteer fire departments. Here again, you'll see recreation, farm equipment from an economic negative impact standpoint. Folks out in Grimson were looking to have a community center similar to the Alice King Park Center that we just talked about. Again, here's the medical services outside of Greenville, the establishment of a rescue squad in Grimsland, and then in terms of negative economic impact, our volunteer fire departments, many of them had difficult times doing their traditional fundraisers. So if there was an opportunity to help them with any lost revenue because they could not get out and do their fundraisers due to the pandemic. And then our final public input in person, we met out in Farmville at their public library. If we're going to give money out, we want to make sure that those who are seeking money are able to meet the compliance standards that I talked about. So setting aside some type of money for technical assistance for our nonprofits. Again, support for our food insecurities. As you had a proclamation earlier, Pam Strickland was out to talk about human trafficking and how due to the pandemic and the negative economic impacts that more people were being put into that particular negativity. Childcare and job training for those who may have let their industries or their jobs close and they need childcare to get back to work. We had a conversation about some isolation rooms at the Community Crossroads Homeless Shelter. Business assistance for those businesses that were actually forced to close. If there was an opportunity for a partnership between Pitt County and the town of Farmville and recreation. And then lastly, some creek snagging. On our Zoom sessions, now I will tell you, surprisingly, our Zoom sessions were not nearly as well attended as our in-person, so I kind of put all the information on one slide, but we held Zoom sessions on November 10th, 17th, 22nd, and December 1st and 2nd. Big part of the conversation, again, was the community health services outside of Greenville. We did have one particular group talk about if we're going to put these community health services outside of Greenville, that we need to be aware of the communities that they serve and that the people providing the service are kind of reflective of the communities that they're placed in. Again, assistance for nonprofits, incentives to help people get out and get vaccinated and get their boosters. If there was an opportunity for transportation services to get people vaccinated. We had a long discussion about wetland drainings north of the river and how that could lead to some recreational opportunities as well. On our online survey, we had pretty good results from the survey. It seemed like daily, constantly, I was getting information in. So we do have an ARPA webpage set up that has a lot of really good information, and that's where we put our survey. The survey consisted of 6 yes or no, do you support style questions, and then each respondent was given an opportunity if they wanted to expand upon just beyond yes or no. And then at the end of the survey, we took those 6 areas and we asked them to rank them 1 through 6, with 1 being their highest priority to receive ARP funding. So those 6 areas were public health response, negative economic input, premium pay, broadband, water and sewer infrastructure, and public sector revenue. As you can see from the rankings, the public health response had the highest, most favorable ranking, all the way down to the public sector lost revenue. What you're going to see here in a second is even though that public sector lost revenue didn't rank as high as some of the others, everything here had a high, overwhelming majority of people put it down as a yes, no. They put a yes as they wanted to support that level of funding. It's just, as you can see, the vast majority of people thought, the first priority ought to be the public health response, followed by the negative economic impact. So for each question, when you look at the public health response to support public health resources, a response to COVID-19 mitigation efforts, medical expenses, behavioral health, certain public health safety, human services, and other related staff. So from a score of yes or no, 93.06% of people supported this, and the average rank was 2.2. Some of the feedback that people put directly into the survey was equipment for EMS, a collaboration between the county and ECU Health Services, additional work in the Candlewick Sanitary District, improvements to the Alice King Park, which include classes, walking trails, and gym, funding for the homeless shelter, community mini clinics, public health information to make sure that we're getting the appropriate COVID-19 information out to the public, drug and mental health programs, and then some type of establishment of greenways in the county. To address negative impact, 90.28% supported this with an average score of 3.1. For direct feedback was for lost revenue of operations in our EMS and rescue squad, travel industry, the arts, and our historically under-modernized businesses, a performing arts venue, deferred county projects, an academic public-private partnership in our rural communities. And then again, like with our in-person session, the lack of fundraisers for our nonprofits and volunteer fire departments, and then just an overall theme throughout the survey was just nonprofit assistance. Premium pay, this is something that we've already done as a county, but from a survey standpoint, 86.1% of the community that responded supports it with an average score of 3.4, and then additional pay in our public health and emergency service employees, our public school employees, and then our county employees. Broadband, 91.67% support doing some type of broadband services into our underserved parts of our county with an average score of 3.8. And as you would imagine, the access to quality service was high on the list. We did ask people that wanted to see some specific speeds of 100 megabytes download and 25 megabytes upload. They definitely saw the benefits for education and employment, and they wanted to help those underserved communities. Water and sewer, 90.28% supported with an average score of 4.8, and the only real feedback that we got was for additional work out in the Candlewick Sanitary District. And then finally, with the replaced public sector revenue, this was only a 76.39% with an average score of 4.18. Again, that nonprofit fundraising efforts, lost revenue for our arts, potential revenue for county projects, lost tax revenue, and losses directly attributed to the pandemic. In terms of direct responses, everything listed here, I received some type of direct correspondence from folks. So, for education and children programs, the youth education, mental health, recreational programs, emergency shelter north of the Tar River, food distribution for food insecurities, Performing Arts Center, community integrated healthcare, air filtration system at the health department, housing repairs for seniors, wetland, watershed, drainage, and recreation programs, address the court system backlog due to social distancing protocols, and then construction of a multi-sports complex. Again, I want to make sure that I drive home the compliance standpoint. Whatever decisions you all make, we need to make sure that we do it within all of the guidelines, whether that's through the state or the federal government. Because obviously the last thing we want to do is 2 or 3 years from now, or whenever this is over, get audited and have to give money back. So we want to make sure that we're fully within compliance. And then lastly, we will be bringing back some policies that we need to update, especially in terms of uniform guidance. One of the things that we had talked about through our public input session was that the federal government had not published their final rules and regulations. That has changed. They published it on the 6th. It's a 437-page document. Luckily, they have a smaller Cliff Notes version that we're going through right now. The one thing I would like for you all to consider, because of the enormous scope of the amount of money and what we can and can't do, is to take the information that I've presented tonight and think about having a special meeting or a workshop to dive deeper, to establish some funding categories, to create the funding guidelines, and to start allocating some of the funding. I think there's a lot of things that we can do right now that I think are pretty easy, but I do think it's important for us to come together as a group and figure out a plan of exactly how we want to tackle this, the time frame. We don't have to tackle everything this spring. We have plenty of time. I almost recommend that we do it in chunks as we move forward. And I think it's probably something bigger than just having a presentation tonight, taking 15 minutes to go through the information. I will tell you that I have been asked to put together all the information. So if any of you specifically want that, please let me know so I can add you to the list. Some of it is very easy to put together and some of it is a little bit bigger, so we'll probably have to look at a thumb drive of some sort. The final interim rule, like I said, is 400 pages, so if you would like a copy of that, that's definitely something I'd like to know in advance so we can get that together, or I can at least give you the link to the Treasury Department if you want to look through that. The smaller guide is only around 45 pages. So I'll probably put something together for your information that goes out on Friday, but if you want the full detail of what we collected, I'll be more than happy to give to you. And then really the last thing I leave with you all tonight is if you all have any opportunities, obviously with the final rule coming out last Thursday, I do believe we are at a place that if we do have some opportunities to start spending as early as today, based on you all approving it, then obviously we can start that ball rolling and maybe put something together and come back the first meeting in February. So obviously at any time, I want to give you guys the opportunity to move forward with that. So that being said, I'll take any questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Remind us of the amount of this money. What's the total amount?
35 million.
I'll jump in. So we were awarded 35 million. We've spent some of that already on some of the internal areas of premium pay you all approved back in September. And at the time that you all decided to go out and look at the public input, you had said to keep in place also our incentive pay for those that are getting vaccinated. So I would say we're probably somewhere down to 33.5 million left to be allocated.
Okay, the reason I mean, that's a large sum of money. And I know that we have had some projects in the county that we've talked about over the years. They're big projects. We've never been able to find the money to do those. One of the things I know we've talked about is a full-size gym with a stage out near the Alice King location out there for the whole community to be able to use for many, many different things. If that were the case, and with that amount of money, I would think that that one could be built in another part of the county, you know, similar to that could draw people from the community to to be able to take advantage of many things that would help improve life in for our citizens. So that's just, I don't want us to divide it up into little bitty, and we can't focus on this is what we spend our money on for the county and it's still here and it's being used and that sort of thing. I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm not looking for us to make a decision or anything tonight, but, and I do think secondly, that we need to meet separately in a workshop atmosphere where we talk about this so that we can come up with a plan and move forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Nunley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree. I think that, and thank you, Brian, for all of your work and all the staff for going through this I guess preliminary exercise of gathering the information. I think it's really beneficial, and it will be beneficial for, I know for me to start to make sense about what the community really wants to, where they want the priorities to be. And I for one agree with you and with Commissioner Ward. I do think that it would be prudent to workshop this together, have some time to digest the information, review the final rule, and then start to game plan about how we want to go about, setting those categories, priorities, and then do the fun work of figuring out how we're gonna do it. But I do think a workshop setting based on the complications and just the breadth of the program, I think that would be prudent. That would give us the ability to really fully take advantage of the work that staff has done up to this point to gather that community input. So I hope that we can if not set a hard date, maybe, Brian, maybe you have an idea about when, or Mr. Chair, maybe you have an idea about when it would be good to do this. I imagine we're going to be tied up with budget, things of that nature, and there's just a lot to consider, of course. And Ms. Manager, I'm sure you have some thoughts on that as well. But I would be okay with, maybe the three of you putting your heads together to decide what might be a best time to come together on it and giving a recommendation to the board on it, and then deciding how we want to set that workshop at a later date.
I like that idea.
I think that sounds good. Maybe we'll get through the CIP workshop and go from there.
And if I can add as well, I think it would be important to be able to do that workshop in person. I understand from Dr. Silvernail's recommendation that he thinks we may be past this peak closer to the end of January. So once we get through that, February might be, we can have our clerk poll the board to find appropriate dates when all folks can come together.
Good. I think we should do that. We don't need a motion or anything to head in that direction, do we?
You do not. We can move forward with that instruction.
Okay.
That sounds good. And let's move forward with the manager's report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have first on your report, your meeting dates. Next meeting, February 7th at 6 p.m. and February 21st at 6 p.m. It is my hope, after consultation with the health director, that we will be back in person or in a hybrid format like we had been doing, and that this fully virtual format will be temporary. You also have a January 24th, 8:30 a.m. capital improvement project workshop that we currently have slated as virtual since it remains within that window of peak. Also on your manager's report, you have, I would like to recognize our County Departmental Safety Awards from the North Carolina Department of Labor. And this is something fun and another good news item that we get to present each year. And our departments have done an incredible job again this year with safety. We received from the Department of Safety a first-year gold award for animal control, a first-year gold award for Pitt area transit, a first-year silver award for public health, a first-year silver award for solid waste, a second consecutive silver year award for the sheriff's office, a second consecutive year silver award for the social services, a third consecutive year silver award for the detention center, a second consecutive year gold award for buildings and grounds, and a third consecutive year gold award for general government in Pitt County. So certificates will be mailed to their departments following this evening's recognition. And I continue to applaud our departments for being proactive and diligent in our safety efforts. We also wanted to take a minute during my report to recognize the passing of former Commissioner Eugene James. Wanted to publicly express sympathy to the family of former Commissioner Eugene James. Mr. James served as a Pitt County Commissioner for 30 consecutive years from 1984 to 2014, and he was a true public servant. He will long be remembered, and we will always maintain his legacy as we meet in the Eugene James Auditorium of the County Office Building to carry on our business each month. Along that same vein, I just wanted to express sympathy to the former Commissioner Jimmy Garris on the passing of his wife, Carolyn, this morning, and extend our thoughts and prayers to Mr. Garris and his family, as was mentioned earlier this evening by Commissioner McLaughlin. We have the Neco Legislative Conference that will take place February 12th to the 16th. And for those attending, special rules have been shared about safety protocols and agendas. And then my last good news item for this evening is an introduction of the county senior leadership team. I'm thrilled as your manager to be in this position. And as you know, Pitt County is fortunate to have exceptional staff at all levels of government. Pitt County is unlike many others in that we do not have a standalone deputy or assistant manager positions. Instead, we have high-performing department heads who bundle additional management responsibilities with their regular duties. Mike Taylor and Brian Barnett have served on the management team, bundling deputy county manager roles with their positions of chief financial officer and chief information officer, respectively. In an effort to maintain the good work that we're doing and expand leadership opportunities within the county, as well as create a well-defined path towards county manager for succession planning, I've created 4 assistant manager bundles who, with myself and our deputy managers, will make up Pitt County's trusted senior leadership team. I intended to introduce this team in person this evening, but since we have pivoted to virtual, I've worked with our public information office to present a very short introductory video. If you will indulge me for just a few minutes, if Dawn will play that video.
I'm Janice Gallagher, the county manager. I could not be more excited to introduce my senior leadership team.
I am Brian Barnett, Deputy County Manager, Chief Financial Officer. I attended Appalachian State University for my master's degree and North Carolina Greensboro for my undergraduate. I am a North Carolina Certified Budget Officer and Finance Officer. I have 15 years of experience and nearly 4 of that with Pitt County.
I'm Mike Taylor, Deputy County Manager, Chief Information Officer. I'm a proud pirate where I earned my undergraduate and MBA degree from ECU. I'm a certified government Chief Information Officer with over 26 years of local government experience.
Hello, I am Sam Crone, Assistant County Manager of Revenue and Economic Growth. I'm a graduate of East Carolina University, North Carolina Wesleyan, Liberty University, and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I have certifications with the North Carolina Department of Revenue and the Department of Secretary of State. I have 17 years of public service experience in state and local government.
Hello, I'm Tim Corley, Assistant County Manager and County Engineer. I'm a graduate of NC State University and a licensed professional engineer. I have 24 years of local government experience.
Hello, I'm Florida Hardy, Assistant County Manager for People and Community. I'm a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill with 40 years of local government experience and 23 years as the county's Human Resources Director. I'm a senior certified professional with the International Personnel Management Association for Human Resources.
Good evening. I'm James Rhodes, Assistant County Manager for Planning and Environment, and also serve as the county's Planning Director. I hold undergraduate and graduate degrees from East Carolina University, and I'm also a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. I have over 34 years of local government experience, of which 33 of those have been here with Pitt County.
This team brings the experience, intelligence, and diverse perspectives to the table to allow us to work collaboratively to implement the board's policies, manage people and projects, and lead Pitt County into the future. Pitt County is a leader in the state, best in the East.
Wow, thank you, Janice. That was fantastic. Really excited.
Outstanding.
Yes.
Thank you for joining me and welcoming this exceptional team. We have a lot of exciting things going forward. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my manager's report.
Thank you very much. At this time, we will entertain a motion for approval of the items for consent.
I'd like to make, I second it.
It's been moved and properly second, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Chairman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
No.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams,
Yes, I'm sorry. I was off.
okay, Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin? Commissioner McLaughlin?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-1.
We can now move on to items for decision. First being the property owned by Pitt County Schools, known as the Old Stokes Gym. Assistant Manager, Mr. Corley.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me, I was having a little difficulty there. Let me start my. Everybody see that all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so this item is in follow-up to a discussion we had at our last meeting involving the Stokes Gym that the Pitt County Schools wishes to basically sell as surplus property. They had a offer on the property, and we made a site visit at your request, and I have a report that has some information about the project. We met with Aaron Bullard from the Pitt County Schools and got some information from him, kind of what they've dealt with in the past on this property, as well as costs that they've seen on looking at demolition for the property. So I'll go through this. First, I'll talk a little bit about the location. Obviously, it's northeast corner of the county off of NC 903. You'll see the blue there indicating the approximate location. There is the Stokes School at the corner of Tyson and 903. That area that's in purple is the actual old gym that sits there now. There actually is another structure that sits in front of that, which is an old, I guess, cafeteria area or something that was utilized as well for the school's services. Here's some pictures of outside the school. You'll see that the roof is in pretty bad shape. The awning around the building has obvious material that has asbestos in it, as well as paint that has lead. This building was actually looked at in, I believe, 2015 for actually demolition, and at that time it was approximately $250,000 to abate the lead and the lead paint as well as the asbestos and remove the structure. There is some additional pictures of inside due to some of the leaks that have occurred. The ceiling is starting to fall in, a lot of mold growing on the walls, as you can see. Some locations of the floor are in good shape, but a lot of them are also, it was a nice floor at one time, but the rain and the elements and it not being heated and cooled has certainly taken its toll on the floor as well as the rest of the structure. Again, here's some other close-up pictures. Those first two on the left are inside. Those are the showers there as part of the gym, and close-up of some of the stuff growing on the walls inside. Not sure if that's mildew or mold, but there is something growing there. And then that top right is the other structure. It is also in about similar shape. It's obviously smaller, but in similar condition as it is in the gym. So just a little background. It is currently owned by Pitt County Schools. It was in use from 1948 to 2004. So that building had a good run there, 56 years of use, which was really good for the community there to utilize and for the school. Again, in 2015, the school system investigated demolition of the structure. It was about $250,000 at that time. Expectation would be that it's more now, just to dispose of the hazardous materials within the structure as well as demolish it and haul it off. Those materials have to go to special landfills, and special folks handle that material. There's also some environmental health issues in regards to the septic systems that are out there. The septic systems there are not efficient for the use of those buildings at this time. They're very small systems. Our environmental health director went out to the site with us last week when we visited, as well as Councilmember Perkins Williams, Brian Barnett, James Rhodes, and we looked at those issues, looked at the asbestos. You can tell there's areas that do contain asbestos within the roof mainly, and then the lead paint issues we believe that are present throughout the building. So here's some estimated pricing on the gym if we were to kind of bring it back to life. And again, these are rough numbers. Didn't really, with the time frame we had, didn't have a lot of time to really get substantial specific costs. They are more based on square footages that we receive from folks that do this type of work. And it's subject to change, obviously, based on the environment, construction environment and other things. So we estimate that just the asbestos and lead paint abatement being in 2021 dollars would be, or 2022 dollars now, $400,000 to $500,000 for that abatement and removal of that material. And then the upfit construction, which would be going in and redoing it, repainting, new roof, getting the floor repaired or redone, basically going through giving it a makeover, be another $750,000 to $1 million. And then trying to figure out, we believe there's a lift station fairly close, sewer lift station fairly close to the school that it utilizes. The thought is that we would have to probably pump the sewer, the septic to that location, being as there's not enough gravity fall to make a regular sewer system work. So that work is estimated at $100,000 to $150,000. So in total, approximately $1.25 to $1.65 million to get that facility up and going again. So that's our kind of our rough number of what it would take. So based on all that, kind of what does staff recommend? Obviously, with those types of numbers, it's difficult to say that that it's worth that amount of money for that size of facility to bring it back to life. It's certainly unfit, and obviously there could be some unknowns as well as far as once you get in there may be some things that we find that we don't know about. So there's just a lot of things going on there. Be a very difficult project. And that type of work probably is very expensive, especially compared to new construction. The first piece of getting all the material out of the hazardous material out would be the hardest part, most likely. So we would ask that the county commissioners not exercise its right of first refusal. We'd also recommend highly that the Pitt County School Board vet the intended use by the proposed purchaser, meaning that person that is interested in purchasing, knowing what they're up against. There's zoning compliance issues, use issues as far as what it could be used for, obviously the environmental concerns that we've talked about, and also building code requirements as far as it meeting structural requirements and other building code issues, including the sewer issue that was talked about. So we really don't want them to give it to this person or sell it to this person, and it becomes something down the road that the county has to deal with in terms of any of those zoning or environmental issues that the county becomes involved because the purchaser did not know about them and realizes that it may be a larger undertaking than originally thought. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, or if staff has anything to add, those that came to the site visit, I'd be happy to answer those now.
Commissioner Nunley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Tim, for and Commissioner Perkins Williams for really working on this and getting community input. I wanted two questions. One, it involves, I guess, something that I've not ever mentioned, but I've heard it mentioned by Commissioner Colson a number of times. But the concern about when we have businesses that put property on, improve a property, vacate that property, and then it's left for us or someone else to deal with after they're gone. And my concern is here, it sounds like there's going to be, for whoever ends up with the property, a pretty substantial cost to remediate the lead and asbestos situation. And of course, I guess, you know, and I wonder, seeing as how we're the, I guess we help Pitt County Schools build it, and Pitt County Schools, we've abandoned it. I wonder, and this is more a hypothetical for our board, but you know, what obligation ought we to have to make sure that we're leaving property that we've abandoned in a condition that can be used by a private party, or is this something that when we look at this Pitt County board to fully vet, does that mean that whoever we fully vet, that they also make a financial commitment? If they're going to sell it, yeah, you get it for $10,000, but you know, there's a but we have it with an understanding and a covenant in place whereby you can buy it for that low amount, but you've got to understand that we've got to make sure that the property is left in a condition that's fit for the community moving forward, and not a continued hazard. So it's really one question, but with two prongs. What are your thoughts on that, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I think that may be really probably a question, especially for school-owned facilities, when those particular things are not going to be utilized anymore. I don't know if there was communication made in 2004 when this was basically left to sit, if there was any, you know, I don't know if it was utilized for anything else past that date by other groups, or if there was any notification made to the county at that time that they were no longer in need of it or going to use it. So maybe filling in those gaps as far as some communication, lines of communication, as far as when those types of facilities are no longer going to be used, or have plans to do that in the future, that we kind of plan ahead as to what is the best use or best thing to do with that particular facility, whatever it may be.
Well, and I guess, and I'm driving at, and this is for the board, I have, you know, and I'm sure that many of you know that have been out and seen it, and it's right. I mean, the place is right up next to where the kids go to school. And, you know, if this were to be sold to someone that basically doesn't do anything with it, and it becomes a, you know, it not only an eyesore to students and staff, maybe a health hazard to students and staff, and kids that may play in and around the area. And I'm worried about us being so loose with what happens with that property, and it falling into a worse situation than it already is for that community. And I just want us to think about that. And I don't know what, if anything, can be done. If our county attorney, if there's any covenant that if we did sell it, you know, or if we probably don't have authority to not exercise right of first refusal and then put a covenant in place. Is that something that, I don't know. I don't know, but those are my thoughts and concerns.
That is correct. I'll just jump in. I did meet earlier today with Dr. Linker on another matter. The law is clear that the Board of Commissioners really has two choices here. One is to buy it, and the other is to choose not to buy it. And then our statutory authority beyond that is significantly limited.
Thank you. Commissioner Perkins-Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciated the opportunity to go out to view the building. I've never been in it. And I have also met with the Carolina Stokes Advocacy Committee. The community residents express appreciation for the fact that the Board of Commissioners are interested in hearing their ideas. They would love to have the building. However, at this time, they suggested that we refuse our option to purchase it. So at this time, I'd like to offer a motion, if I'm in order.
Yes, ma'am.
out the motion that we reject the purchase of this building for the community and allow some future opportunity for the community to receive some type of community setting.
Commissioner White?
Did Commissioner Perkins Williams make a motion to refuse to buy that purchase or that property? Because that was what I was going to make a motion to.
Yes,
I'll have to
Danny
second that.
seconded it. If you'd like.
Okay, yes, I will second her motion then.
Okay. Commissioner McLaughlin, did you have a comment?
No, I support that motion. I was going to second it, but Commissioner White did it, so I'm good with that.
Commissioner Albright?
Can I make sure that's what her motion was?
I believe that is. She confirmed that. And
So you're saying that we sell, that we don't buy it, that you sell it to the buyer. Is that your motion, Mary?
My motion is that we have the opportunity to purchase it or to let it go back to the school, and the community
That's what I thought you were saying.
do not want us to buy it. And if you see that last dot in this, they were concerned about the use, and so that was included. I mean, we don't need to buy it. It's a problem.
Okay. Thank you.
all right, Commissioner Colson?
Well, I don't want to buy it either, but Mary, on the latter part of your motion, I got confused. I wasn't really sure what you were saying.
I did too.
Me too.
Well, I'll clarify my motion, Mr. Chairman. The community residents appreciate the opportunity for us to consider them in this decision, and they asked me to reject the purchase of this property to use for them to use and consider them for any future budget to consider them for that. That's what that was. Because they would like to have something in Stokes, but not this.
So my understanding is your motion is to not exercise the right of first refusal.
Exactly.
Okay, and I believe Ms. White seconded that motion.
Yes.
Sure. Okay. Since it has been moved and properly second, Madam Clerk.
Chairman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Albright,
No.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley.
Yep.
I'm sorry, was that no?
Yes.
No, okay. Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-2.
Okay, now moving on to the personnel ordinance change.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say something that I saw in the pictures when Tim showed that. I'm just surprised that they left desks in that school. You know what I'm talking about?
It's a gym.
There was more than desks. There was it almost looked like people had just got up and walked out of the building up front. There's Mary can attest. There's stuff everywhere.
Yes.
I mean, you would think that they would have put that furniture in surplus and could have used it somewhere else in another school.
There's a lot of junk in there. There really is.
I mean, but it wasn't junk when they left it, I'm sure.
No, I don't mean that. You're exactly right. I agree. But I'm just saying it's full of stuff. If you've been out there and looked at it.
At this point, it is not only junky and unsightly and dilapidated, it is also dangerous and hazardous for health of individuals.
Yeah, I'm not talking about now.
There's no sewage or water.
No, I'm not talking about now, but I'm talking about when they left it. That they left furniture.
Yeah, I was looking at what it is today.
Madam Manager?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I think we all got the letter that was on the back of our guidance for tonight, and from the Dr. Linker. on behalf of the Board of Education, and I don't know if I'm reading this wrong, but they wish to pursue that property and doing away with it. I mean, they're saying they would take it and take it down. If I understand this correctly, do the rest of you understand it that way? And is there anything wrong with us doing that? I mean, I think it would be a good idea.
It's right in the first paragraph.
Right.
Let them have it.
Well, if we got a motion, do we have to vote on this other motion? Because I would like to, make a motion that we do that we give it.
I thought since we rejected it, automatically remain with the school.
I agree.
Mr. Chairman.
We got a lawyer.
Oh, go ahead, Jordan.
I'd just like to say to the chair and members of the board that the matter before you tonight was to the Pitt County Schools owns this property. They would like to sell it. Before they can do that, they have to come to you and say, would you like to exercise your right to buy it first? And so by the motion tonight, y'all said no. And so then that would give the school board all the authority they need to dispose of it to this potential, this offer that they've received. So you don't need a motion to further approve that.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
I do think, however, we need to do, as in the recommendation, is discuss with the school board the implications of getting it to this group, to this person or this group, and what may become down the road, just so they get a clear understanding of what they're up against at this property.
So you're saying we need to follow through with the motion?
Yeah, my recommendation is to follow through with the motion, but also to talk with the school board and make sure they inform the proposed buyer of the issues that may arise with purchase of this property.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman Fitzpatrick, if I'm in order and if I'm allowed by the board, with Tim's comments, I would, with the board's consent, modify my vote to yes, with that additional comment with Tim Corley.
Okay.
No issue with that.
So it's passed?
Yes, it's passed, and we are now on item 2, personnel ordinance change.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your agenda package is a recommendation for a minor revision to the personnel ordinance relating to the manager's authority to review, recognize, and implement a special raises in a very unusual circumstances upon consent and collaboration with the Human Resources Director and the Finance Office.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Perkins-Williams.
I offer the motion that we accept the recommendation of the county manager.
Second.
Okay, it's been
Really quick, just because I had somebody.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
I
I had somebody reach out to me and just kind of ask me some questions about this. I was just wondering, is there a certain reason or a certain position in mind for this? And I just wanted just a little bit more clarification on this.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I've got some considerations I would like the board to think about.
okay.
Okay, as a past general manager, as I know full well that it is good to be able to be in a position to pay people what they're worth, and I certainly believe in doing so. When I read this, I was a little nervous about it as it's written, not because of any individuals in distrust or whatever, but I think that something like this can be lost track of by the Board of Commissioners. Who's going to remember this 2, 3, 5, 12 years down the way? Bear in mind that every 2 years we have elections to the Board of Commissioners. We have new people coming on board. They'll have no history of this. They don't know anything about it, no understanding whatsoever. So what I would like to suggest, and I think it would improve this, is to have some kind of a cap, because the way it's written here, there's no cap on the total amount of money. And I don't know what that is, but I'll just say something right now. Let's say $100,000 for a term. And that this ordinance sunsets after 2 years and must be reviewed and renewed by the full Board of Commissioners at the end of that 2 years. And that it's done on 2-year increments. Thereby, we don't lose sight of it. It can't get out of hand money-wise because we'll put a cap on it. And I would like to suggest that we also think about that if there's any leftover monies from a 2-year period, that it does not carry over to the next 2-year period and allow it to balloon that 2-year period. So whatever we put on it as a cap. Now, obviously, when we review it every 2 years, we may change the cap that I proposed at 100,000. Now, Janice, when you brought this forward, you may have a number bigger than that, and maybe the initial amount ought to be a larger cap for the first bit, this first 2-year period. But I'm just a little nervous about putting this in here, and I just believe that it could be abused. I'm not saying by the staff that we have now that it would be, but I think the potential is there if we don't sunset it, renew it every 2 years, and put a cap on the monies.
Mr. Chairman, and I have talked with Commissioner Colson about this. I have no objection to the cap or a 2-year sunset. My intent is really to have an opportunity without belaboring the board on individual cases to achieve equity where it may be necessary, where funds are existing in budget, and in very unusual circumstances after consultation with human resources and finance. So there would not be more than that capped amount within your existing budget anyway. And so if those additional protections would be acceptable to the full board, that does not prohibit me from accomplishing what it is that I would like to accomplish with this additional authority.
And I'd like to add one other thing, Janice, is that there be an exception that would be allowable by you as the county manager and in consultation with human resources and so on, that you come back to the full board at any time to change it for whatever reason.
I would be agreeable to that as well. That's all very reasonable.
Now, what about the $100,000 that I put in there per year? Is that a reasonable number to start with, or should it be more or less than that?
I believe that's a reasonable number. And if not, I would come back to the board, but I do not anticipate that I would need to.
Anybody think that that's not a good idea?
I think you should make a motion to include it.
Can I accept that in the motion?
Okay.
I accept that suggestion and recommend from Commissioner Colson as the maker of the motion.
Okay, did somebody else have their hand up? Alex?
Yeah, I'm glad with the sunsetting of it. I don't really see a need for the money on it, but I'm okay with it. Janice, she says she's okay with it too. But yeah, if we're coming back and looking at it every 2 years, we're going to get a report, and it seems like that's a little more than we need to put into it. But if that stays, I'm fine with it.
And it's going to be, my understanding, it's going to have to be approved within the budget anyway, and also kind of the.
Yeah, but looking at it every 2 years seems reasonable. It's
okay. So the original motion.
I accept it as the maker of the original motion, the 100,000 as Commissioner Colson. I don't know who seconded.
I think we would need a new second probably with that.
Second.
Did somebody second that?
Yes,
Chris. I did. Yes, yeah, I do.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. Madam Clerk?
Yes. Chairman Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Albright?
Yes.
Commissioner Colson?
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Nunnally?
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we can now move on to commissioner comments. Commissioner Ward,
No comments.
Commissioner Huggins,
No comments.
Commissioner Albright,
No comment.
Commissioner Colson,
No comment.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
I always say, please work on your trash, residents. It's getting bad. And be safe.
Commissioner Nunley,
No comment.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
No comment.
and Commissioner White.
No comment.
Okay, this time entertain a motion to close session.
Motion to go.
I believe that was moved in second. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chairman, if we could read the basis before you vote, that would be great.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's been suggested this body go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, pursuant to subsection A4 to discuss an economic development matter, subsection A6 to discuss a personnel matter, and subsection A1 to discuss a confidential matter.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Chairman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, if we can now make the proper arrangements to go into closed session. All right, thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody back into open session. At this time, entertain a motion to approve closed session minutes.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve closed session minutes from December 6th, 15th, and 21st.
I
Second
second.
it.
It's been moved and properly second, Madam Chair, or Madam Clerk.
Chairman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And at this time, I'd entertain any other motions.
Yes, I have a motion I'd like to make, please.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to make the motion that we appoint Jordan Smith, our county attorney, at a grade 88, step 9, effective the 9th of January, 2022.
I would like to
Second.
second that.
It's been moved and properly second, Madam Clerk.
Chairman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Congratulations, Jordan.
I offer the
Thank you.
motion
Thank you
that
all.
we,
I'm sorry, Commissioner Perkins Williams?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and properly second, Madam Clerk.
Chairman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Colson,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Mike, did you say yes this time?
I did. I got to keep you on your toes, Ann.
I heard that. My feelings are hurt.
Congratulations, Jordan. This is great. Great news. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Jordan.
It
Yes.
is.
Good night, all.
Good night, everybody.